This is the Brandon Smith Show, and I am your host, Brandon Smith, and the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, that is to help you live a life that much more free from dysfunction. And today's topic is about relationships, but we're going to take a slightly different angle on this. I'm going to talk about, and we're going to talk about, the 3 things you are doing right now that is killing your professional relationships. You think about all those relationships that matter to you, particularly in the professional world. I'm going to guess there are 3 things you're doing right now that are killing those. And to help me on this journey, I've got my good friend, Randy Hain, who I think is a relationship guru. I never called you that before, have I, Randy?
I'm so uncomfortable with that, but you go with it.
I'm going to go with that. It's relationship guru. And if you don't know Randy, if you know Randy well, you know what I just said is absolutely true. If you don't know Randy well, trust me, I promise he is. So Randy and I, we're doing in this format, what we're going to be doing today is Randy's got his top 3. I've got my top 3. And we're going to see where they overlap and maybe where they kind of edit or amend each other. Mm-hmm. So I haven't looked at Randy's list. He hasn't looked at my list. We're gonna see how this goes together, all of us. So Randy, before we jump into our top 3, you've been on the show before, so many listeners already know who you are and kind of heard your story. But for the folks who are new to you, and if you're new to Randy, check out some of the archive shows. I promise you will not be disappointed. Give kind of the couple-minute blurb on who you are, what you do, and why this topic is so important to you.
I am the president of Serviam Partners, and my company is about 6 years old. And prior to that, I had senior executive roles running companies. I ran talent for a multi-billion-dollar restaurant company for several years, and then I was in operations leadership before that. So I have always been passionate about coaching and leadership development, and really wanted to focus with Serviam Partners just in those areas. But Brandon, as you know, there are a lot of coaches out there. So before I launched my company in 2013, I went through this exercise that was very connected to today's topic. I said, okay, what are my skills? What are my passions? And what's missing out in the Atlanta marketplace with the business leaders I know and the businesses I know that maybe I could do something special for them? What could I offer them that was unique? And after I went through that exercise, it dawned on me, I'm a high-functioning introvert. And a lot of the people that I work with are a little introverted as well, and they don't build relationships very well. And I have built a whole methodology and process around it because I have to work at it extra hard. And I started offering that process to my clients, and they loved it. So that became one of the key components of my company. So I do exec coaching and leadership development, and I coach on business relationships to individuals, teams, and companies, and have more fun than I deserve. But my first and foremost thing that I'm proud of is I'm a husband and a father. I've got 2 great kids and been married to Sandra on Monday for 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, I feel really ill-equipped myself, given how awesome Randy is to try and offer a top 3 list, but we're going to run with it anyway. So let's start with number 3. So I challenge you to do this list. Okay, what's your number 3? What's your number 3 thing on the things that we're doing right now that are killing our professional relationships?
When you make it all about you, you go to a meeting, you're meeting with a friend, maybe a long-term relationship, and it's all about you. And all you think about is your agenda, getting your topics covered, and you never really think to engage with the other person and see how life's going for them. It's all about you. And that is so annoying. I deal with it myself. I run into it a lot. And I think that's a relationship killer.
So I put number 3 for me. Transactional, only when you want something.
Great minds think alike.
I had a feeling this is going to happen. Sorry for everyone listening. I mean, I know you wanted like something different, but we're the same thing. So I had a client several years ago. I'll give you 2 quick examples, and,
sure.
And if you've got one, I'd love
Sure.
to hear it. So I had a client several years ago, and I was coaching, and I did the 360 interviews for this person. And he had come from the investment banking world, which is more of a transactional world, gone over to the investment side of the world. And I was interviewing all these leaders around the globe. So it was a big investment house is where he worked. They said, oh gosh, he's a great guy. We love that guy. He's a great guy, but he only reaches out to us when he wants something. Like it feels just like kind of just using me. It would be way more helpful if he actually reached out when, not because he wanted something, just because he just wanted to connect. Or maybe checking in with how we're doing. And it's funny, recently I had an email from someone who, I like him generally, but he operates the same way. He violates number 3.
Mhm.
He reached out to me and he said, hey, do you have any referrals on, someone who could facilitate this kind of thing, a retreat? And I said, sure. And I offered some referrals. And he does this to me all the time. This is not the first time this individual's done it to me. He said, okay, well, thanks, but that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm thinking about something else. Hey, do you have any tips or tricks for how to, he just kept asking me for more and more stuff. Not asking me about what's going on with me or how he could help me. And he's never actually been a client of mine. He just he reaches out to me when he wants help and free stuff, which is not necessarily the way to do it. So it definitely made me think of that one. But of course, you've got it on your list as number 3 too.
Well, I would go down a slightly different path with this. I actually will talk later about, folks that just want something from you. But when I think about it's all about you, people show up, they've waited patiently to get on my calendar. We're sitting there, and what a great chance to either build a new relationship or maybe foster a deeper one maybe we've met before. And they just talk about themselves. They talk about their world, what's going on, and they just don't think to engage and really ask questions and get to know you. I find this with a lot of people that are looking for jobs. And I have so much empathy and respect for people that are looking for jobs. We both help them, and we want to be as helpful as we can be to that population. But I find that when a job seeker meets with me, all they do is tell me their resume, what they want, and then maybe with the last 5 minutes, we may have a conversation. But the first 55 minutes was resume and what I'm looking for. And that's a miss, because you want me to be motivated and excited to help you. And I can't do that unless we have built trust in a relationship. You sending your or regurgitating your resume to me is not a way to get me excited about helping you. So when I was thinking about it's all about you, it's just people that don't think to actually have a 50-50 conversation.
Okay, so I want to do a follow-up question with that, because I bet this would be really helpful for people.
Sure.
So when they violate that and they walk in and they just talk about themselves and all about them and what they're looking for, when you leave that meeting, how do you feel? And what are your thoughts about that person?
Well, I have 2 responses. One, I'm a coach, so I tell them. I respectfully and lovingly, candidly tell them, listen, let me just tell you how you came across today. May I have your permission to be candid, because I want to share something with you that was amiss. And I let them know because I don't want them to do that with other people. So first and foremost, I tell them. But I can tell you, unless they turn it around, maybe offer an apology or try to rectify it, I'm not inclined to want to engage with them further. I'm not inclined to want to help them. I'm turned off. But I do try to tell them. I think it's an obligation I have to try to steer them back in the right direction.
Yeah. And so I think for a lot of people that don't maybe get that candor, it's good for them to know that you're ending that relationship. People might not want to help. You think you've put all these irons in the fire, but really you haven't. Okay. All right. So those are number 3s.
Number 3.
Pretty much identical with some different twists on it. How about number 2?
Number 2 is failing to nurture and grow your relationships. You have to look at your relationships like a garden, and you have to feed and nurture your garden. And I think I've heard that from a friend before. Maybe his name was Brandon Smith. But nurturing and growing your relationships takes an investment of time. If you meet someone one time, you know what that's called? That's an acquaintance. That's not a friend. That's not a relationship. In order to build a relationship, you have to keep going back again and again with, quite frankly, no agenda. So I have a very regular, intentional cadence of interacting with the people in my network. And I know a lot of people, but I'm very intentional about grabbing coffee, grabbing lunch, reaching out with a phone call. Because if I don't continue to nurture those relationships, they'll wither and die. So I have spent a number of years really focusing on not just adding new acquaintances or new friends. I want to actually invest deeply in the people that I do know. And it creates a richness that, quite frankly, it makes life worth living. And it makes my business successful. Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
Before I do that, I'm going to announce my number 2.
What's your number 2?
Quite different from yours, actually. You're not dedicating time to nurturing your relationships.
I promise you, we did not share these.
Now, so we're hopeful number 1 is going to be different. Either that or we're getting a piece of the truth. I don't know what's happening when we're getting this alignment here. But when I wrote that, I want to go further because I know you do this exceptionally well. So I can remember several years ago, for many years, I had you when I was teaching a class at Emory's Business School.
Yes.
On how to get recognized for high potential, I would have you come in as a guest speaker. And your session was always such a big hit. And I remember the last time you did it, I had a student come up. He was a more mature student. He had been in the military. He'd worked a bunch. And what he came away with was, he said, oh my gosh, that whole idea Randy had about taking your relationships and putting them into spreadsheets and thinking about kind of where the right rhythm for people. He said that was like a huge takeaway for me. I'm doing that from now on. He ended up going to work for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and kind of helping to provide more money to schools. He's super passionate about education. And your kind of advice to him really helped him think about how to manage those critical relationships more importantly and more strategically. So I hinted at this right now. Go into a little bit deeper for the listeners. What is your process or structure that you do? So let's say we've got all these relationships. How do you really dedicate time and know the right amount of time to dedicate to nurturing?
Well, there are several facets to this. I think it starts with, you have to know your personality style. I'm a high-functioning introvert, and I love coffee. And lunch meetings are pretty good, and I don't do dinner meetings. So I focus a lot of my energy and relationship building over breakfast or coffee and sometimes lunch. So that kind of works for me. It's one-on-one. It's easy. I cannot stand networking events. I'll host them, but I don't actually like to go to them because it makes me anxious. So I wanted to, with this whole idea of building relationships and nurturing and growing the network, I wanted to do something that worked for me. So I advise your listeners, do what works for you. Secondly, I really think it's important to look at your top, call them stakeholders. Like, who are your stakeholders? For me, it's clients, it's dear friends, it's family members, and that list may have at any given time 75 to 100 people. So throughout the year, they're my A-listers, and I want to spend probably one meal or coffee a quarter with that group. Okay. And if you're organized, it's doable. But those A-listers get one meeting a quarter from me, and I'm very intentional about scheduling that. I have another population that's called the B list. Not that they're not A people, but just that they're people that I'm getting to know. They're not yet strong clients. Maybe we've met a couple of times. And once every 6 months, I want to get in front of you, have a cup of coffee, whatever. And then I've got folks that are kind of at that C layer that you've reached out to me, you've read one of my books, you've sent me a message via LinkedIn, and you're kind of in my orbit. Maybe you're a brand new coaching client. We haven't really gotten to know each other, but you're kind of on the periphery. I may once every couple of months reach out, talk to you by phone. Maybe once a year we'll get together. But my goal is to get you up to the B and A list as quickly as possible. And then layered across both, or across A, B, and C is emails. I send articles, my blog post, out to this entire population every couple of weeks. And it's called For Friends of Serviam Partners. And I just send a copy of my blog post. I'll share something you've written. I'll send something from Harvard Business Review. But every couple of weeks, I want to touch that group and just stay on your radar. So through meetings, through content, through whatever I can, I'm trying to make sure I stay in touch with this population. And it's about 1,000 people. It's about 1,000 total that I'm talking about here. So it's a lot of effort, and it wears my assistant out, but she's a trooper and she does a great job. But that's how I do it.
Yeah. So if you think about the average person, so someone who doesn't quite have that full-blown network like you do, what would be a typical number of people you would encourage people to think about in their A list? How big should that list be?
For the average person that doesn't do what you and I do, that list may be 20, 25 people. All in, their entire list may be 50 to 75, really. I mean, you and I think about this on steroids. We have a much bigger view of the world. But the average person that I run into, anecdotally, I would tell you, 20 to 25 A-listers and a total list of 50 to 75. That's really about it.
Okay, so maybe thinking about what's that 50 to 75, starting in that place.
Yes.
And then grouping them into those categories and thinking about what's my care and feeding for that network to kind of grow. And I love what you said. You're like, the goal for those C's is not to stay in the C's.
Yeah.
It's to move them up as quick as possible into those A's and B's. You want that. You're not trying to create an elite group of top 20. You're trying to really grow as big as you can get that A group to be.
And one other thing I do when we're coming up on Christmas, but all of my clients and all of my friends get a Christmas note with a personal note in it. I've been doing that every year for 19 years. Usually the joke is the day after Thanksgiving, I start writing the cards, and by December 15th, my hand's a claw. But I really enjoy doing Christmas cards. I like to get them. I like to send them.
Yeah, another great way to do that. and provide something that you like to do. As you said in this, find something that's comfortable for you. And this is comfortable for you, and it's a great way for you to give that care and feeding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on to number 3. And so I want to hear your number 3 right after the break. So stay tuned. As soon as we come back, we're going to talk about actually our third one, which is the number 1 item on our list. What's our number 1 reason that you are killing your professional relationships right now? Stay tuned. This is Brandon with your coaching minute for the week. So one of the tips I give my clients that have direct reports is the following tip. At some point during the year with your direct reports, often about halfway between the annual review process, so at that 6-month mark, at the end of one of your one-on-ones with one of your direct reports, ask the following question or questions. What could I start doing to support you better? What could I stop doing? And what could I continue doing? What could I start doing to support you better? What could I stop doing that's getting in your way? What could I continue doing that's working for you? And what you'll find is they'll come back with valuable feedback for you on ways you can adjust to be a better leader, but you'll also find that each direct report's going to give you a little bit slightly different feedback. It's a great way to make sure you're giving everybody what they need so you're not guessing. So pick that point in time and do it. Now, one more important hygiene tip around this. Make sure you let your direct reports know you're going to ask that question so they can prepare and be ready when it happens. So that's my coaching minute for the week. I look forward to hearing how it goes. Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. I'm your host, Brandon Smith, and today we're talking about the ways in which you are killing your professional relationships. In fact, the top 3 ways. We've already hit number 3, number 2, and now my guest Randy Hain and I are talking about our number 1s on our list. So Randy, drum roll, what's your number 1 on your list?
This is one that really gets me, and it happens, I would say, monthly. Reaching out only when you want something. And that's a little different from the number 3 that I mentioned, which was about making it all about you. I will have folks that I have not heard from in 5 years. Yeah. Reach out, Randy, how are you? It has been a long time, my friend. Let's get together. And ultimately, great, I'm glad you reached out. But I'll respond with, hey, absolutely, my calendar's kind of full. What do you want to get together? Well, I just lost my job and I'd like to talk to you. Or, hey, I need to get connected into your company. Can we talk? And this idea that they thought they were comfortable with our relationship and that we haven't talked in 5 years, we haven't talked in 7 years, whatever it is. And I can reach out to you and immediately go back to the place we once were and ask you for something. The lack of self-awareness there really bothers me. And I think it's a relationship killer because I'm not inclined to want to be that helpful. Now, if you reach out and do this, hey, Randy, I apologize. It's been a few years. I have completely been buried in work, and I know I haven't reached out in a while, but I could sure use your help. I will knock down walls to come get you. I will come to help you any way I can if you acknowledge that there's been a gap. But just reaching out and you just want something and you have not stayed in touch with me, that's a relationship killer.
So when I think about the 2 ways you framed that up, the one you liked better had more vulnerability and humility to it.
Yes.
It was just kind of this thing, I'm so sorry, I should have, I can't believe how the time's flown, but I actually need your help. And even by asking someone you need their help is a kind of a form of vulnerability.
Sure. And listen, I will help you. I'm a helpful guy. I will do whatever I can, but just be cognizant of the fact that you have not reached out for a long period of time and you're only doing it now because you want something. And again, you have the need, and who can really say what's going on in your mind. And I want to be helpful. I'm empathetic about that. But from a relationship perspective, it really kind of sets the wrong tone, don't you think? I can give you a true story. There was a senior executive who I was working with about 10 years ago, and he was in a job search at the time. So I coached him, I helped him, I made several introductions. I mean, we became pretty good friends during the 9 months that he was looking for a job. After he landed, he sort of disappeared. I saw through LinkedIn, he moved up in the company, eventually became the CEO of this company. Well, about 3 years ago, he reached out again. Now, there had been a gap from, I guess, 10 years ago, so 7-year gap, okay? So 3 years ago, he reaches out to me, and it was that, hey, Randy, gosh, it's been a long time. Hey, listen, my company just got bought, and I'm back in the market, and I'd love to get together and just pick your brain. And I met with him, but I want to tell you, I'm a big believer in candor. I had a very candid conversation with him, and I said, I will do anything I can to help you, but I want to just acknowledge something that's going on between us. It took you 7 years to reach out. And I know you have a need and I want to help you, but I want to just point out that we had built a friendship and you put that aside as soon as you got what you needed from me. Now that you need me again, you're back here acting like we're best friends. And I said, it rings false. It doesn't ring true to me. So I just want to acknowledge that. And having said it, I'm absolutely willing to help you. He looked at me. He stared at me actually for about 15 seconds. And is he going to throw ketchup at me? Is he going to walk out? I don't know what he's going to do.
I really wanted to watch that. I'm sure there are people right now listening who are like, I've always wanted to see somebody actually have that conversation.
But then he apologized and said, you know what, you're right. And I wish I hadn't done that. And please forgive me. Absolutely. Let's go. And we have stayed in touch more consistently and we've rebuilt a friendship. But notice a theme here in 2 of the 3. We did run into some bad behavior, but we had to address it. I think we have an obligation to address it with professional, loving candor. Let's not let the moment go. Let's not just ignore it. Let's embrace it and say, here's a different way you could have handled that.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've talked about this before. That's not for the faint of heart. But I do think we have an opportunity when someone does something egregious in the relationship area to address it. And in this case, it worked out.
Well, while that was very direct and uncomfortable, what you were doing was you were trying to nurture that relationship. Because if you didn't care, the opposite would have been apathy, right? You would have said, oh, I'm just whatever, and you would have walked away and not done anything.
Yes.
But you didn't do that. You actually fully tried to invest in that and had that honest conversation to do it. Oh, wow. Okay. I still would have loved to have seen that. I'd love to have watched that.
Well, I didn't videotape it. I can't help it.
That would have been really good. All right. So I've got my number 1.
I want to hear it.
It's different than yours.
No.
It is. It actually is a little different. But I think there's a thread in that last story. You aren't looking for new opportunities to build new relationships. So you kind of get your network, you get your job, and you say, oh, I'm good.
Yes.
I'm done. I don't need to go to industry conferences. I don't need to find other opportunities to meet people. I'm kind of complete. You're not looking for new ways. You're not trying to grow that. You say, I got my 75 people. I'm done. And so I think there's definitely an opportunity there for people to look for new ways. What are some new relationships that I can build? Because you never know where it's going to go.
What's really interesting, sort of a subset of what you just said, are the people that find themselves displaced. They're looking for a new job. They work feverishly to build a network that leads them to a new job. And as soon as they get the new job, they stop networking. In fact, they not only stop networking, they ignore the network they just built. 3 years go by, the waves of change blow through their company, they're looking for a job again, and they have to start all over again. I see that play out all the time.
Yeah, and back in one of the many hats you've worn in your career, in the executive search hat, I remember that was one of the big missteps that executives would make. They wouldn't either nurture or build their relationship or look to continue to grow it. And then when they were out of work, they had to start from ground zero.
I wrote a blog post about that called The Unconnected Leader on the Serviam Partners website. I encourage your readers to go check it out.
I encourage them to read it too.
Yeah.
So it's a good reminder for us. Because if we're thinking about professional relationships, we've got to keep nurturing those because it's the one thing that we own that can never be taken away from us. And it's going to guarantee us opportunities, jobs, everything else.
I totally agree.
And I think the other part of this is never judge a book. You could do a sub-theme under this. Never judge a book by its cover. Because you never know. You might be helping someone right now, and 5 years later, they could be in a completely different position where they could help you. Or they may know someone that you don't know. They can help you. And not to say you're doing it to get something in return, but you never really know where a relationship's going to evolve. So I would say, so it sounds like our top 3 are very, very similar with a little bit of differentiation on the last one.
And I think there's some words that kind of run through there as themes. I think that the word selfishness, sometimes that is part of this. We're kind of just focused on us. I think candor emerged as, you know what, we have an obligation when we see it to address it candidly. And I also think a lack of self-awareness. I think a lot of people that engage in this bad relationship behavior are not aware they're doing it. Another reason to be candid to point it out. Lack of self-awareness is fairly pervasive in business today.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. So I know we have a little bit of time left. if we were to flip some of these and you were to think about what are some ways we could, whether you've got a top 3 list or ways we could continue to grow and develop our relationships, anything we haven't talked about that we should have?
I've got 3 things that I think are pretty consistently important for building and strengthening relationships. The first is always be sincerely curious. If you go into every relationship with a desire to learn, sincerely wanting to know, how are you doing? How are your kids? What's going on in your life? How's your career going? I always start with questions. Quite frankly, if you show up with questions, you don't have to carry the burden of having all the answers. So go in and be curious. That's a really good tip for anyone wanting to build better relationships. The second is be personal and authentic. You and I have talked about authenticity ad nauseum in the past, but be willing to share a little bit about your life. What are you doing this weekend? What are your summer plans? What's Thanksgiving looking to look like for you? And when you hear their answers, you can respond back with, let me tell you about my plans. Let me tell you about my life and my kids and my family. I think that willingness to share and be vulnerable and talk about your life is really important. And authenticity, just always be yourself. I think Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everyone else has already been taken.
Yeah.
The third is really important. It's always make deposits and add value. And I have a great story for you. My younger son is applying for a school here in the Southeast. And about 2 months ago, he comes into my home office and he said, hey, Dad, I'm allowed to add 2 personal recommendations to the application process, and I don't know who to use. I can put non-teachers, but I don't know who to add. And I said, I know the president of a pretty well-known restaurant company here in the Southeast. I serve on a board with him. I've known him 12 years. I think he'd be willing to do it. And my son's eyes got really big, and he said, come on, Dad, there's no way. He shook my hand a few times, but that guy's too busy to do this. I said, why don't we try? So it was 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. True story. I emailed my friend, and I said, I'd be so grateful if you would consider doing a recommendation for my son, Ryan. He's applying for this school, and just if you have time, I'd be so grateful. Well, 90 seconds went by, 90 seconds. And my friend responded with, are you kidding? Of course I'll do it. I am glad to help your son. I've met him. He's a fine young man. You'll have the letter next week. So I printed it up and I showed it to Ryan, whose eyes were as big as saucers. He said, Dad, why would he do that? I said, I want to explain what the relationship economy is. I have invested and made deposits in that relationship for 12 years. I've never asked for anything. I've helped my friend's friends. I've given him advice. I've just been a good friend to him, and I've always just tried to be helpful. Today, I needed to ask for something for my son, and I had built up enough relationship capital to make a withdrawal. So I was able to get something for you, and I was happy to do it, and he was happy to do it. So it was a great lesson for him in this idea of making deposits and adding value, because one day you may need something, but you always want to be on the right side of the ledger. Make deposits and build up capital.
Yeah, and I think there's another underlying theme in this too. Let people help you too.
Absolutely.
Because it makes them feel good. Like
Absolutely.
You've done so much for me. Let me help you.
That is a daily prayer and thought of mine, to learn how to let people help me, because we're both hardwired to be helpful, but I struggle sometimes to be helped. But if you don't let them help you, you're denying them that very gift that you get when you're helpful. You know how you feel when you're helping. If you don't let someone do that for you, you're denying them that gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay, Randy, we are like tracking right on time. So we are at that point where, as I've asked you before, I always ask at the end of every show, what's one good life hack for us to help us live a life that much more free from dysfunction? So here we are. We're closing in. We're nearing the Christmas season. We're nearing kind of the end of the year. Can you think of any kind of one life hack tip for us to live a life that much more free of dysfunction?
Okay, this may be an odd one, but I've got an idea for your audience. I've done this now for 12 years in a row. Who really enjoys getting fruit baskets for Christmas? Not me. Cookie baskets with stale cookies? Not me. That's not my thing. And my clients don't enjoy that either. So let's say that you have a professional group, maybe friends, clients, whatever, and you want to give them a meaningful gift. Here's my suggestion. I want you to find a charity. Maybe it's your favorite charity. Maybe it's their favorite charity, and make a donation in their name and then make sure that they get an email acknowledgement of that. But make a gift, spend that money wisely by making a gift to a charity in their name. Last year, Children's Development Academy, run by Maggie DeCann, great organization. They have great pre-K programs for underprivileged kids. Well, I made all of my client gifts to that organization, and my clients loved it. They thought it was fantastic, and several of them have now gotten involved with CDA. This year, I'm going to do this with Growing Leaders, an organization I've been on the board of for years. So find an organization that means something to you or to your clients and make a donation in their name. That should be your Christmas present this year.
Nice. Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, so if people want to learn either more about you and what you're up to, or even read some of those amazing blogs that you've written about managing relationships and just even managing your career, become better leaders, better people, where can they go?
ServiamPartners.com, SERVIAM Partners.com.
Like SERV, so serve I am, serve SERVIAM.
Yes, or the Latin Serviam, I will serve, not like will I am, serve I am, but ServiamPartners.com. And follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Facebook, but primarily ServiamPartners.com is an outlet for my writings.
Okay, fantastic. Awesome, Randy. Well, you'll be coming back on again.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Another list. I don't know what the list will be. But next time I'm gonna try and find something that we're not exactly aligned on, just to mix it up a little bit. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Can we talk about what's dysfunctional out in the marketplace? You got your list, I've got mine.
Oh, that's really good.
It's right up your alley.
That's really good. Folks, you just got a teaser. This is coming. And thank you for listening. And thank you for keeping up the fight every week against workplace dysfunction, trying to make our workplaces and our lives that much healthier. Catch a new show every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on iTunes.thebrandonsmithshow.com and live on Facebook, facebook.com/Brandon Smith, WPT for Workplace Therapist. And if you've enjoyed today's show, and we certainly hope you have, please, please, please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. That's how we get new followers. That's how we spread the world and make our tribe that much bigger. So until the next time we connect, have a great week and an awesome life.